Hello everybody, how's it going? My name's Ben. Welcome back to the Bonny Rackham. I hope everybody had a lovely Christmas if you do your Christmas, if you do all that. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great New Year's. I'm sort of recording this just in that no man's land kind of time. So, all fingers crossed if I can get it edited, it should be out just before. But if not, Happy New Year as well. Yeah, I was hoping to get another one, maybe even two out in sort of since the last one. But yeah, Christmas has just been a lot and it's been very overwhelming and very overstimulating. Used up a lot of spoons. So yeah, unfortunately, Black Cells had to take a bit of a back burner, unfortunately. But yeah, we are now on to episode 4 of season 2. So yeah, let's get a title sorted.
First item.
Okay, another one where I couldn't think of anything kind of obvious, and I couldn't think of anything like, wow, that's a good one. That's good, I like that. But I quite like it, so I'm going to call it low-hanging fruit, which is basically, yeah, so there's a little scene we'll talk about, obviously, with Jack and Max, where they're sort of going at each other a little bit, and Max is a little dig at him, But yeah, it is a bit of it's an easy episode. It's low-hanging fruit. It's an easy episode. I think it's a bit of a transitional episode. It feels very kind of like, because it's about to go up a level, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's lots of little scenes, and we're sort of finishing up one thing and setting up another, and yeah, it's kind of low-hanging fruit. It's kind of easy. It's an easy one. Put it on in the background, Yeah, sure, there's things you can deepen and stuff, but yeah, it just flows and it goes, and it's just, one of those sort of ones. So, yeah, let's get into this one.
Item.
Okay, so this was written by Jonathan E. Steinberg and Dan Schultz, and that's the first time that we've heard his name. Though oddly, on the credits, instead of saying written by, like they always have so far, this one said teleplay by, which I don't know if that means anything different. And this one is directed by Clark Johnson, who is back again after a 1-episode hiatus. Yeah, so this episode is very busy, it has quite a lot of quick, short scenes. A handful linger, like usual, but otherwise we sort of might be jumping between things a little bit more frequently in this sort of deep dive. As always, if I've got something to add, I will, and add my thoughts. Otherwise, I'll sort of give you the bare bones. As, yeah, there's a little bit more plot exposition in this one as well, and sort of things being discussed that ultimately, by next episode, don't really come to be anything. And so we begin with a quick scene of Abigail. She's waking in her cell. She wakes confused, and she's clearly starving, poor girl. She's filthy, probably freezing, and she has no choice but to eat this horrible, mouldy, maggot-infested bread, that someone's left out for her. It's clearly been hanging around for a while. And so, yeah, we'll finally get to meet her for a little bit this episode, and we'll get to learn a little bit about her and her father. Okay, so we're still inside the fort, and a messenger delivers Flint's demands to a pissed-off Vane, and Eleanor is with him. Flint's threatening just total destruction of the fort, and given Vane a deadline to leave before it starts. Vane wants to fight, he wants to retaliate straight away, but because of the area of the fort that the warship is facing, its defences just aren't strong enough to take it on. So Vane asks Eleanor, if she's behind this, if she's given him this info, if this isn't part of her plan to push him back into the sea. She tells him she had no idea this was coming. She had no idea Flint would be so reckless and Hornigold so petty. As, it's clearly Hornigold that's instructed Flint of the best position and where to attack and all that sort of stuff. Eleanor, who, bless her, is going to be back and forth like a blue-ass fly this episode. She says she has faith in him to form a better plan than just declaring war and going all in on Flint's ship. A plan that, won't end up destroying half the island and turning it into a war zone. And we'll learn a bit more about, why she's fighting so hard for this and kind of doing her best to go between these men in a little bit. So speaking of Hornigold, he's talking strategy with Flint. Again, bit exposition-y. Don't need to go into it all too specifically, as we know, early next episode, after a few cannon shots, Miranda will bring the news of Abigail to Flint, and, that'll all calm down. So yeah, Flint's realising here he might have been a bit hasty and gone in all guns blazing, so to speak, without thinking it through too hard. He's realised only now, after he's got the snowball rolling, that time is against him and that Vane has all the advantage on land. Hornigold, yeah, he's obviously not impressed. So Flint's gone from being pretty assertive and confident last episode to second-guessing himself a little bit here, especially when they're against the clock. And speaking of clocks, we are now in a flashback, and first thing we see is the Hamilton's grandfather clock. And that will be of something, of course, to come back to in a few episodes. That's going to play a very important part later in the season. As obviously that's an important piece of furniture. Yeah, as well as representing, that time is against Flint, especially this episode. So Miranda meets James, who has been asked to come and see Thomas. She reassures him this has nothing to do with them. One of those things you maybe don't think about much. But on a rewatch, she seems very confident that that's not what this is about. So yeah, it's a fair chance at this point that Thomas knows that they have their thing going at their point, and he's not too concerned, and I think it's probably likely him and James have something going as well. Again, yeah, as I painstakingly tried to brain fart last run through, I think you have to make up your own headcanon a little bit about who knows what, why, when, how, all that sort of stuff when it comes to these three, because it's not really explained so much. So yeah, Thomas is looking a bit nervous, and he tells McGraw his father is coming. Thomas says he's come to trust him very much and wants his help. He wants to propose something big to his father, but he knows it's a risky proposal and wants McGraw to talk him out of it. And yeah, we'll come back to that in a little bit. Okay, so it's another morning after the night before, and Jack and Max are in bed. Our Janex are, they're recovering after the night before. Annie's fine. Annie's sleeping soundly, lying on Jack. She's had the time of her life. But it's awkward still with Max and Jack. You can feel the tension in the room. One of the girls knocks on the door for Max, and Jack gets himself dressed. He gives Anne a little kiss on the forehead. Don't do that. As he gets up, and still, no word exchange from Max. Just a couple of odd looks between them. We see Max looking a little bit like she's over this scenario a bit now. She's maybe feeling the pressure of mixing business and pleasure, and she's, she looks to Anne, maybe asking herself, is this all worth it? I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of Max catching really true feelings for Anne. I think we're getting close though. Yeah, an interesting scene with her and Jack in a bit, sort of relating to the title as well, that we can get into all that a little bit more. Okay, yeah, so just outside the same door with Adele, who's going to have her first decent little bit of screen time this episode. And Jack learns about Flint and Vane, the impending showdown. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's out and about, sort of looking about. And Jack, sharp as always, asks the bigger question, if Flint got the gold. And Adele, she doesn't know. So Eleanor and Vane are in the fort courtyard, and Eleanor, she's on her way. She's doing one of her first runs. She's going to be like, that I think it's Nicki Minaj, like, dun, 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 dun. She's going to be like that this episode, kind of backwards and forwards. So yeah, we see her rowing over to the warship, and Scott greets her on board, and she meets in the captain's cabin with Hornigold and Flint. She gives them Vane's reply. And Flint orders everyone out, including Hornigold. I'm not keen on the guy, but yeah, he's being messed about a little bit these last couple of episodes. He thinks he's got an ally, and now it's kind of bulking a bit. He was ready to go, and so yeah, understandably, he's a little bit pissed off. So the note, Vane's reply, the note makes it clear. Vane is going for favour on the island, getting people on side, labelling Flint a madman. Both men, are basically going to be trying to sell to people that the other is a madman this episode. But as Vane is on land, as said earlier, he has numbers in his favour right now, and Flint knows it. As Vane accused her, of being behind this now, so does Flint, which Eleanor denies. It's unclear how true or untrue that is. She made the suggestion, to Vane to think of something a bit smarter, if nothing else. But they go over their partnership and both question each other's actions over the last day. She suggests he move the ship, allow Vane to save face on this score, and then they all sit down civilly and discuss it through. But once again, her suggestion is ignored, not wanted. Flint knows once he loses this position he's in, he'll never get it back, and he's aware of the cost of battle, but points out to her when it comes to Vane, they just don't see him the same way. So yeah, Eleanor, she's sent off again, and she's sent to deliver Flint's answer back to Vane. See, like I say, we're hopping about a lot, so we're back with Vane. Alright, so back with Vane, and he goes to visit Abigail in her cell. She's terrified, traumatised, it's not clear what sort of treatment she received with Lowe's crew. I don't think it was the obvious that might happen, which is something, I suppose. I think Lowe was a monster, but not a complete, idiot. Yeah, her honour, taken in that sense, would almost certainly mean he'd be hunted for the rest of his days by Ash in retribution. But him and his crew obviously scared her enough that she's just making herself as small as possible against the wall. And Vane tells her she's his guest and that no harm will come to her as long as she does as he says. She asks about Lowe and he tells her not to worry about him anymore, he's safe from him and that he cut his head off. And she says, good, with much relish. So, it's clearly not been a nice time in captivity for her. Vane asks about her father, trying to find out how close they are. Think it takes a moment for her to work out, what he's getting at. He asks her if her father loves her, and she says yes, and that he'll pay him for whatever he asks for her. And he asks her if she can write, and dictates his terms as she writes it down. 250,000 ransom for her safe release, with the threat, if Ash tries any tricks in the exchange, he'll kill her. And then now back in the fortyard, Vane tells his guy she's writing the ransom, and he sees that some men have joined his cause already in his battle against Flint. And so back to Flint in the cabin. He's instructing Hornigold, Dufresne and a group, and unseen at the moment Silver, to try and get some men on side for their cause. To speak to the captains, he says he'll go to the beach and appeal directly to the crews. Once they're gone, we see Silver come into focus. Yeah, he's been sat sort of out of focus behind him. And Silver knows when Flint says he'll appeal directly, that he really means him, and he says as much. He's the best man for the job. Flint knows this is something Silver is good at, spreading gossip, word of mouth, talking people on side. And before he goes, Flint asks his opinion on the situation as he's about to kind of exit the door, which is a bit of a shock to Silver. I don't think he was expecting that. Talking to him almost like a partner here. Yes, Silver thinks they have a bit of a task against them. A little bit of parallels, kind of going on between McGraw and Thomas again in this one, in the background, and Silver and Flint in this one. Yeah, again, I don't think remaining in Nassau is a choice Silver would have made. I think he would have just got the gold and then worked it all out from there. By the looks of it, he still looks a bit over this sort of plan. When Flint asks if they might see him as the villain in this story, Silver agrees that they might. And Flint asks him if he sees him as the villain. And Silver says, as long as he gets his gold, he doesn't care about what labels he gives him. As I say, Silver's, just all a bit over this distraction at the moment. The gold is very much on his mind and his only concern at this point. He has no real stakes in anything else at the moment. And Flint, he's being quite reflective and open in this conversation, something he's not really been with Silver before. Silver says it bothers you, doesn't it, what they think, what he's done. He says it must be awful being you. Yeah, it's a very busy and a very kind of angry mind palace that I think Flint lives in. Silver here, I think, maybe the first person, bar Miranda and maybe a little bit Gates, that we've seen work out what's going on in his head, at the present moment, kind of right here, right now. And, once Silver kind of exits the room, we see that Flint, he's not too comfortable with that, I don't think. Okay, so back to the flashback, and Thomas and McGraw are discussing Thomas's proposal he wants to make to his father. Thomas wants to propose not to hang the pirates when they're captured, awaiting trial, but to pardon them all. The island needs commerce, and it seems silly to him to waste the extra hands that they could have to get this thing built and up and running. McGraw says point of fact, they're traitors to the crown. And Thomas asks him to answer simply, will it work? James says to betray a traitor is the act of a coward, and no one in Whitehall will want to wear that label right now. And James is confident that Thomas's father won't go for it, and he'll distance himself from it. Says if the rumour's true, his father's not a man you want as your enemy. Yeah, we know that one's a truth bomb. He says his advice is to forget about this idea. Yeah, this watch through, I'm finding myself wishing we got more Thomas. I really like the guy. He's a smart and kind politician, he's a nice guy, and it's a real kind of rarity to get that kind of combination. Okay, so we're on Nassau Beach, and Silver, doing what he was asked and what he does best. Rumours, lies, and gossip in men's ears, bribes. doing what he can to get the numbers on Flint's side. There's a bit of a commotion and we see a crowd forming. Someone's been pulled out the water. One man tells Silver it's one of his crew. It's Billy Bones. He's back properly now. Still looking very dehydrated and worse for wear. But yeah, more complications for Silver on knowing that this could be more complications for Flint. Okay, so now we are with the consortium captains who kind of just bombard Eleanor a little bit once she comes back to shore. They're asking her what's going on, and we sort of can see, you know, that's kind of conversations going on. And we sort of see Pastor Lambrick is around as well. He's taking in what's going on and, you know, doesn't look too impressed. So Eleanor goes back to Miranda for help. This was obviously not an instruction from Flint, so she's just trying anything and everything right now to talk one, at least, of these men down. Yeah, she's sure, you know, Miranda can maybe be of help and help to talk Flint down and try and make him see sense. And yeah, she's getting a bit frustrated with Miranda, who's not really committing to an answer as she lays it all out to her. She's asking her to make him see how destructive his actions could be. Once again, Miranda has to drop a little bit of a Flint home truth on her. If you believe anyone can make him see anything, you must not know him very well at all. Yep, we'll see that by the end of the episode. Eleanor talks about how chaotic and bad it was the last time that there was no fort to protect the bay. 200 Spanish soldiers started riots on Nassau. Fires, rapes and murder. Oh, the foreshadowing. The foreshadowing, yeah, that one hit me a bit this time. Another great scene with these two. Miranda says what she asks is, you know, simply impossible. Is this because she's tried everything at this point to talk to Flint? You know, to talk sense into him at this point and back down from this? Or because, you know, she's 100% with him on achieving him and Thomas's vision? When Eleanor's frustration rises, she questions if Miranda cares for him at all. Which is just, and again, another step too far, Miranda, and she tells her she's enabled him, encouraged this violence, and dares her to ask, you know, if she cares about him. Then tells a bit of a stunned Eleanor to get the hell out of her house, pretty much. So yeah, I mentioned it earlier, you know, in relation to the title, we now get this really great Jack and Max scene, you know, a little bit of their backwards and forwards. Yeah, so it starts with Jack, who's just chilling at the brothel. He's got another girl sat on his knee, you know, and clearly not around at this point, or someone would be dead. Max inquires about the company he's with, if they're new recruits. You know, we know he's still struggling to get people on side. We saw that last episode. And, you know, she says it would appear his reconciliation with Captain Vane is bearing fruit, but perhaps the low-hanging variety. That's a, you know, because the look she gives him, like, that's a little dig at his manhood, I think. It's safe to say. And it's also, you know, you're going for easy things here, you know, you're going for the guys he was talking to, they're something and nothing, really, you know, she's saying, you can do better. Yeah, gotta love Max and her little quips as well. Yeah, they're talking about last night, and Max tells him, you know, it wasn't of her making, not her idea. He says, yeah, he didn't know either. And she says, you must care for her a great deal. Not once last night did you look in my direction. And Jack scoffs and says, I've seen enough to know to keep my distance from you. I think he'll also learn. I think he knows a lot, but he's, you know, I think he sees a lot more as well in a little bit. Max says she had the conflict within Anne under control the moment he walked in on them and he made it a competition. Max says it's only a matter of time before Anne makes a choice. And even though she doesn't say it, her tone implies, I think, that she thinks it will be her. Max girl, you are right 90% of the time, except now when you are 100% wrong. Jack tells her Anne's been by his side since she was 13. Says we've sailed together, killed together. We have shared things you couldn't even begin to imagine. And you've shared a bed with her for a week. Which, yeah, that's a lot of home truths there. It's a lot of information as well that we get all in that. Yeah, but Max, you know, God love her, she comes back with a bit of a, you know, zinger of her own. And she says, you'll be amazed what can change in a week in my bed. Jack laughs it off, you know, a little bit nervously, because, you know, he would have seen some things. But tells her not to get too comfortable, basically. Then the tone sort of completely shifts a bit, and Max says, what if she can get a new crew for him together as well? Will she be seen as indispensable then? And yeah, she says she has a lead. So yeah, okay, before we get into that setup, let's deepen Max a little bit in this scene just gone. Yeah, it feels like maybe she's been a bit hostile again when she doesn't need to be quite so, making it a competition when it doesn't really need to be. It's possible maybe she's starting to enjoy Anne's company and it's becoming a bit more than a keep the peace type deal, you know, that might be what's going on. Yeah, maybe she felt the jealousy, you know, of having to share Anne in her room last night, but maybe she's plotting things, you know, putting doubt and insecurities in Jack's head. Max is actually a really hard character to read sometimes. I think she's someone who's just always got plans on plans on plans, you know, backups on backups on backups. Yeah, maybe sometimes, you know, she doesn't even know which one she might pick. She's just making sure she's got them, you know, setting things up, or she tries things and says things to see what reactions might be, so she can be like, right, get rid of that one because he said, do you know what I mean? So I think maybe there might be a little bit of that going on as well here, but I think I've made my comparisons to Silver with her before. Very similar characters for me in that sort of sense. So yeah, I still struggle though to see what she gains in trying to come between them and separate them. Sole ownership of the brothel maybe is her long game. I don't know. But yeah, what do you guys sort of think is going on with Max here, and what's her thoughts sort of going on at this moment? And yeah, obviously really interesting power play about to come up in showing Jack, you know, that she knows what she's doing when it comes to seduction to get what you want right now in this scene. So yeah, next scene, they're now up in a room, you know, in the brothel with Adele. The three of them, and yeah, Adele name drops Featherstone. We won't see this great, you know, little character today, but we do now know him by name. And she's got some intel. He's got some men. Jack's a captain without a crew. Yeah, Adele says she has her ways to persuade him. You know, he likes a certain thing. That's fair enough. We don't kink shame here on the Bonny Rackham. Yeah, and Max, you know, she schools Adele in on seduction. This is both to school Adele a bit on how to get Featherstone on side. And yeah, it turns out it works like a charm and she never bloody gets rid of him. It's for Jack's benefit as well, though, to back up what she's just said in their previous conversation. Jack is just watching, you know, her just talking about all this, what you should do and how to do it and what, you know, what gets men, you know, twisted around your finger, that sort of thing. And yeah, he's just watching and taking it all in like, okay, I didn't know anything of this. And yeah, this scene is a good callback, you know, to Jack underestimating, I think, women in general. Max especially, though, as he's finding out here. I think the fact that this sort of deception in seduction is possible is news to Jack. And of course, she is just called back to, you know, you'd be amazed what can change in a week in my bed. He knows Max is not to be trifled with. She can back up her talk. Clearly, you know, in terms of Anne, not an area he can beat her on. All that seduction talk has confused Adele a little though, and she just wants confirmation if she still just bangs the shit out of him. So yes, we are back with Silver now on the beach, and he bribes a guy who's guarding a tent. And inside, you know, we see that Randall's there guarding Billy. And we learn, yeah, with the begrudgingly help of Randall, that Silver is keeping Billy hidden for now, until he works out what to do next. When Billy wakes, first thing he asks is to see Gates. Oh, Billy, I'm sorry, mate. Yeah, I would have actually really liked to have seen this conversation and reaction. Yeah, I think it's something we could have probably had time for, you know, in this one, with the sacrifice of a bit of plotting, with, you know, with the Vane and Flint stuff somewhere, you know, that ends up coming to nothing, like I've said. So yeah, we are back now with Jack, and he's sort of sat at a table in the, you know, brothel courtyard, looking up to the room that Adele's been in with Featherstone for a few hours now. Anne joins him and asks him if he thinks that she can persuade him. He tiredly says he's given up underestimating whores after the week he's been having. Anne turns, you know, to spit some home truths, and yeah, nobody delivers, you know, a home truth quite like Anne. She says she's put a lot of bodies in the ground for him, watched his back and cleaned up his messes. She didn't always understand or agree, but she did it. Some fucked up awful shit because he needed it done. Yeah, we've really learnt this episode just how far back they go and how strong their bond is. You know, we learnt some of the things they've been through together. We can really put some real history now to them. So yeah, Anne's calling back to what she said to Max in 2.1 about owing a life debt. You know, most of the time it seems if Jack says jump, that she's sort of done it. So she's trying to put things in perspective for him a bit. Says she doesn't think last night is something he needs to bitch about. And Jack, Jack's reply is equally an important point, because he says, I know you know this is significantly more complicated than the quantity of tits I have access to at any given moment. And yeah, I think she was trying not to deepen, it all too much with her last comment, but admits, that she knows Max is dangerous, especially to her, and that she's not in her right mind about it all. It's not hard to imagine her getting between them to play against each other. So she's asking for his back in there, because as long as they're on the same page, there's nothing Max can do to get between them. And she's asking a lot of Jack, I think. A little bit of having her cake and eating it too, I think, going on. But yeah, she's also somehow putting it in perspective as well, and reassuring Jack a bit by telling him, this is just sex for me. I can't resist the temptation, and she knows it. But at least if you're in the room, there's a functioning brain between the two of us, and you get 2 women, so get a grip. It's basically what she's saying. They watch Max, talk to Adele at the door, and she comes down to join them. Triumphantly, she pours a drink. They have Featherstone and a new crew, at least 28 men and a ship. Jack is captain once more. Anne is in happy disbelief as well, and as I always make a note of in these early episodes, when it rarely happens, she sits and she takes her hat off. Yeah, she takes that armour off, and this time it's in a packed courtyard. But yeah, again with Max, it seems like she was going to go one way, but she's gone the other, and it's all come up trumps for them. Yeah, the only sneaky kind of long game plotting I can think of in terms of parting Anne and Jack is maybe she somehow put the reminder of Anne's part in the Hammond business in Featherstone's men's head as well, as we'll see the next episode. The men don't want her aboard, so therefore she'd have them separated. But yeah, I've never really thought that Max played a part in any of that in Watch's past, and I'm still pretty confident she doesn't. She's not doing any whisperings or anything with that. But yeah, though, considering all the fallout that leads to it, would be an interesting plot point and would explain quite well why she sticks up and covers for Anne in the fallout. But yeah, I'm getting 2 episodes ahead of myself. Enough Gen X for today, Ben. Okay, so yeah, Hornigold's now talking to Flint. I think they're back. Yeah, they're in the captain's cabin again. He's waffling about Discord, and yeah, Flint just wants numbers. How many have they got on side? How many has Vane got? As Hornigold is reading them, which again, I won't go into it all, he goes on for a bit. It's irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, and we go into a flashback. So, we get to meet Father Hamilton. Lovely, lovely Mr. Hamilton. Another dislikable gentleman. Yeah, not a lot to love here, not a lot to like, and not a lot of love between father and son, as we soon see. Thomas proposes his plan about putting pirates to work and pardons, and his father calls him a piece of work. I say he's a piece of work. Safe to say, yeah, Mr. Hamilton is not for it. Thomas says it's the right thing to do and does a good job of sticking up for himself and making his points. So yeah, they talk politics for a bit, and Thomas, yeah, he's defending himself well, making his points. It's a bit of an awkward dinner table, it's safe to say. And Mr. Hamilton asks McGraw if he's in agreement with him. And yeah, McGraw, James, he looks a bit torn. He's kind of like, he doesn't want to say anything. He doesn't want to say the wrong thing for Thomas. I think is, what's going on here. And Miranda speaks up for the first time, and she just defends James. Says he wishes to stay out of this, basically. And Mr. Hamilton rudely says, Madam, you've done enough to damage the good name of this family. I would ask you keep both your mouth and your legs firmly shut. Like, damn. Damn, alright, that's what we're doing. McGraw stands, in anger and in support of Thomas. And yeah, we can just see he's holding it well, but we can see his anger is kind of boiling over. He says, I support it. I find his argument persuasive. I find his intents to be good and true. And I find yours wanting, sir. He asks Mr. Hamilton to leave. He's picked his side with the knowledge it might cost him his career, I think, here. Thomas jokes after, when he's left, Mr. Hamilton. He says, did you just ask my father to leave his own house? He takes his wig off, showing who he's really comfortable around. Imagine needing to put on this silly thing with your father. I know it's all kind of politics and yada yada, but there's no one else in the room. Do you know what I mean? It's the four of them. So, you know, it just shows who he's more comfortable with, you know, who he can be himself with. James is now very much a part of their small circle. He tells him his father will be doing all in his power to stop this and make trouble for them both. McGraw especially, which, yes, again, we will see the consequences of that the next episode. McGraw passionately says, you know, people can say what they like about you, but you're a good man. More people should say that, and someone should be willing to defend it. Yeah, can go back to my point I was, again, trying to make last episode. This chemistry, like romantic and kind of sexual, feels just so much more powerful and real to me than the carriage scene from the last episode. And we've not even seen them do anything physical yet. I do believe when we see it next episode, this is the setting. You know, when the reveal happens, I think it's this scene that's the setting. Yeah, I could be wrong. But yeah, I can't believe I kind of missed their chemistry and all the little signs, you know, the first watch through. It just all seems so obvious to me now. I think maybe that's why they've done it so well with Miranda, because you're just looking out for that you're not really paying attention to that. Yeah, either way, you know, he's got things going on with both of them at this point, and I think that they all know. And they're all cool with it. Okay, so now we're back at Miranda's, and yeah, it's the pastor making another late night call. Yeah, you know, she says it's pretty late again, pastor, and, you know, he says that he doesn't sleep anymore. Well, boo-hoo if that isn't the consequences of your own actions, mate. But, you know, we learn he's kept his distance, you know, at service, but he's seen her about. So that answers the question that I had last episode. You know, because I knew he popped up in it again, but I wasn't quite sure how it all came about. So yeah, he's being nosy again, knows she's been visited by Eleanor, so clearly, you know, he's still spying either himself or got someone else doing it. He overheard the gossip around the beach and has learned, you know, of this hostage situation. When he talks about Vane's plan to ransom the daughter of a lord, we see, like, recognition just spark up in Miranda. She's not listening anymore to what he's saying. We're just focused in on her. She's not listening to what he's waffling on about, and neither did I. Yeah, she asks him if it's Lord Peter Ash's daughter that he's talking about, and if her name is Abigail. Yeah, I think she supports Flint as best she can, as someone with no choice, or, as she's made quite clear, no voice that will make him see reason. But as we saw last season, you know, I think she would quite like to move on from it all at this point. Other than remembering Thomas, I think she tries not to deepen it all too much, as he does. But yeah, we see recognition and memories evident on her face, and then we get to jump into a memory. So yeah, Thomas is holding a meeting in, you know, one of his rooms with I don't know, there's about a dozen or so people maybe. I mean, he's proposing his plans out loud now, you know, we sort of get the bits and pieces of it. And to people that could help him towards making this vision a reality. And yeah, safe to say, the general consensus is no. But one man stays behind, you know, when everyone's left, they sort of quietly left like, yeah, it's a no from me, Bob, you know, and do their dip out. Yeah, and we meet Lord Peter Ash. We now have another link to the past and the present. And yeah, can feel on the first watch that we are just getting closer to the heart of all this, and that we just need a couple more pieces of this puzzle. So yeah, we're getting Eleanor's scene. She's sat alone, drinking in her office. Yeah, I do feel for her this episode. You know, she's been sort of buzzing about, sort of doing her best, doing what she can with these stubborn guys. She has a visitor, her father. He's heard the news and says he's here to help. Again, I don't have much hindsight and thoughts to add to this, because other than his demise, I've never really paid enough attention to his scene in Watches Past, so I forget all the sort of little ins and outs. So yeah, that's a dynamic, and we'll have to get into it as it sort of comes along to sort of remember as it happens. I still didn't trust him in this moment though on first watch. So yeah, final scene, and Flint is observing the fort from the deck, and Scott comes to join him. He asks Scott what he would do. You know, he asks Scott for advice now this episode. That's two people he's asked for advice. And Scott, yeah, I'm enjoying Scott so much more this season. I can see this Scott being the double agent, you know, that's living two lives, as we will know he is next season. And he was obviously there during all this trouble that Eleanor was also talking about earlier. You know, he was obviously still about. So he says to fire on that fort will cause a divide, you know, that will cause great damage and give invaders an easy takeover for when the time eventually comes for them to claim Nassau, which he pretty much says, you know, it's gonna happen. Yeah, he's saying, you know, let this one go, basically. Take the elf, you know, with Vane for the bigger picture. And it's good advice. And Flint, yeah, he's lost me again a little bit this episode. Obviously, the flashbacks coincide well with what he does in a moment, so that's great writing and past and present storytelling. But I think the writers divvied a little bit with him a bit this episode. But I guess they needed a reason to keep him in Nassau, you know, just about long enough before he learns about Abigail and all that chapter begins. Looks like he's maybe being talked around the bigger picture still in his mind. Thomas's vision, you know, he makes his way over to everyone who's sort of waiting for an answer for him, you know, waiting to see what we're doing. And Hornigold asks him, you know, what say you? And he just says, fire. You know, which is a pretty badass way to end the episode. And yeah, Flint won't be told. It's his way or the highway. He's got it made up now. This is what he's doing. And yeah, unless something big comes up, which it does, you know, yeah, he wasn't going to back down from this one. Okay, so yeah, let's get into the afterthoughts and MVP and all that sort of stuff.
Last item.
So yeah, off the bat, I think this was a bit of a dip down quality-wise. There's still some great stuff, you know, going on, don't get me wrong, and this is still Black Sails at the end of the day. Yeah, the flashbacks, you know, are really amping it up, and a lot of new info about the Ashes, and about Thomas's relationship with his father. And I love, you know, our Janek stuff this episode, that really sort of keeps it going for me. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of the aftermath of the James and Miranda stuff from last episode. You know, other than a little throwaway line from Miranda. Just something, a little half a scene. But yeah, there's some decent setup stuff going on, but it does come across a little bit filler-like in places. A lot of plotting and back and forth that, yeah, was interesting to follow on a first watch, first time. But knowing Flint's plan will change, you know, very early next episode. Not, as always, as interesting on the rewatch, I don't think. Plus, you know, Mr. Hamilton, Mr. Guthrie, the pastor, Hornigold, Dufresne is there as well, even though he don't say anything. Yeah, bring back Hammond from the dead, and yeah, this is just a dickhead party of an episode. Yeah, it's the weakest Season 2 episode for me personally, but the fact that it still gonna get an 8.0 rating shows you the quality that we're dealing with here. Okay, MVP, yeah, first one that was hard, and not because I was spoilt for choice. I don't think any of our principals are really in for a shout. Flint and Vane's pissing match, you know, sort of cancelling each other out a little bit, really. And Anne and Jack, not really in contention today. And Silver not quite doing enough to warrant it. And Max maybe, but I think it would maybe be a bit generous. And I actually would give Adele the bigger credit, you know, for doing whatever she had to do in that room. To convince Featherstone, you know, to be on board with all this. And it would be her only opportunity, you know, to realistically ever be in a real shout of grabbing an MVP. Eleanor, I do feel sorry for her, and she's doing her best, but it's not really getting anywhere. And again, her flim-flamming on Flint, you know, last episode hasn't helped in causing sort of all this fallout. And Thomas, you know, only chance he'll get also. He's sticking to his plans. He knows it's a losing battle, really, but stands up to his father. Never easy, you know, to stand up to a cold, harsh, authoritative person, you know, like that, let alone, you know, it being a parent. But do I save him and give him the nod next episode? I feel like one of our mains might be the bigger shout, though. Nah, you know what? I've talked myself into it. Yeah, let's give Thomas Hamilton the shout this episode and give him MVP. And yeah, and if he gets it again next episode, then he'll earn it. But like Gates, I think he deserves to be on this board, you know, once at least, when all this rewatch is all said and done. Okay, so best scene. Yeah, I think the Jack and Max, you know, having it out, I think is a really good one and the highlight for me. I went into it in a lot of detail, so obviously I won't go over it all again. Quotes. Yeah, you know, going with the title of this one, I love Max subtly having a go at Jack's manhood in the same scene. And Jack telling Anne, you know, I know you know this is significantly more complicated than the quantity of tits I have access to at any given moment. And yeah, of course, Flint's simple fire, you know, is always a good one. Nothing massively groundbreaking though, but some decent ones. Yes, so that was episode 4. Yeah, and I will catch you in the new year for a big one. A big episode 5. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Thanks for the love this year and for joining this little podcast. So yeah, I will see you guys in 2024, where we are also celebrating 10 years of Black Sails. So I've not really got anything planned, you know, I'm kind of just doing this, and this is kind of covering everything, but I don't know, I'll have a think. It's going to be a good year for Black Sails. Thanks for watching, thanks for a great 2023, and I will see you on the flip side very soon. Alright, peace out, bye.